What's up, everybody? By now, you've probably heard of the Terrance Howard interview on Rogan and other people talking about the interview. And most of what I've heard other people saying is not that good. Like Professor Dave explains, who the algo kind of made an authoritative source a few years back, apparently, because every time there's a subject out there, then this guy comes along debunking it, and it gets recommended to anybody looking into that subject repeatedly. Him and several others I've heard have just said that Howard is legitimately insane. That's actually one of the nicer things that he said. I don't know if I should even repeat much of what he said in the first couple minutes here, but a little sample as he's talking about he may be a great actor, he might suck, but what's more important is his extracurricular activities as a delusional narcissist who thinks he's the smartest person in human history. I don't know exactly when he started showing the world his God complex, but it was way before Rogan, and let's go back and he shows a clip from Red Carpet, something or other. So that's a pretty scathing critique, and a lot of people got big mad about this. And it's just a guy discussing ideas. The narcissist with a God complex, you'll see that he's pretty soft spoken. I didn't really hear any arrogance in him, and I think his heart's in the right place on things. And I'll just tell you, this conversation led to hours and hours of me this week deep diving into some pretty high level mental exercise as far as physics and the nature of reality and that kind of stuff. I don't know if we'll get into all that in this video. We'll see how this goes. But I can tell the people that are big mad about all this have never had a conversation like this in their entire lives. They're offended that someone might even suggest that the so-called experts might have taken a wrong turn a while back. They've never spent 60 seconds thinking about what's being discussed in this video. And they don't need to. They've outsourced their thinking to the high priest scientists who have figured out life, the universe, and everything, and have come to the conclusion that 95% of the universe is something we can't see, smell, touch, hear, nor measure or detect in any way. So we just call this dark energy and dark matter, and everybody's good with it. There's been a multi-front assault on intelligentsia and academia the last couple hundred years, and it really does seem like some Babylonian magic or something has been conjured here, but they really do take the best and brightest, smartest minds and get them lost in theoretical mathematical equations to the point where the mathematics is all that matters. It doesn't matter if you can observe it in physical reality as long as the math works. And when it doesn't work, then that's because of the dark matter. So I think it's kind of arrogant and naive to think that we have a complete understanding of reality. And I think it is possible for someone to come along and say, look, the fundamental principles that we are using to understand the building blocks of all matter is fundamentally wrong. And that's basically what Howard claimed here, but big claims need big proofs. In a way, he brought the receipts on that, and in a way, he didn't. And I'll just have to explain that as we go. But this seemed to be received as either he's next level genius or he's just a complete wingnut. And instead of just throwing a label on him, I will take the different topics he talked about, each at face value. Our modern culture has a really bad habit of taking one thing that somebody said that was wrong and using that to say that everything that they say is wrong. And the interview started with some pretty out there claims, so that by the time he got to the meat and potatoes of things, most people had already wrote him off as a wingnut. The big ideas might have been better received if he hadn't started with this. And I'll just shorten the story down. He says that his first memories were in the womb. And he'd see his hand, and he didn't really know it was his hand, but he just knew that that was his friend. And one thing that struck a chord with me is him saying that he was saying to himself, I have to remember, I have to remember. And unless this turns into an hour-long video, then I probably can't explain why that struck a chord. But then he says he remembers coming out of the birthing canal, he remembers seeing the light, the doctor, he remembers getting circumcised, the humiliation ritual. Oh yeah, I ain't covered that yet. But he says that he remembers everything basically from conception. That's an unfalsifiable claim, but okay, I'll give you that. You can remember everything since conception. But then he says, and the proof of this is when my wife was pregnant with my son, every night for a week at 6 p.m., I would take a flashlight, I'd put it on her belly, and I'd run it around in a circle. And then on the seventh night, I didn't do that, and my son started poking around in the womb. And he says, this is how I proved to my wife that what I'm saying is true. And I'll play some of the clips on the deeper topics, but this is just to save time. But what he just described doesn't prove that his son is at a level of awareness that he's going to remember this for the rest of his life. What he described is classical conditioning and getting a Pavlovian response. In the original experiment, Pavlov would ring a bell before feeding the dogs so that they became responsive to the bell instead of the food itself. If you train them to where they get to go for a walk every day before dark, then one day you don't take them out, then they're going to be saying, hey, where's my walk at? Ask Ruckus. So while this does show that his son was cognizant of his surroundings, it doesn't show that he's going to remember any of this or that he's any more intelligent than a hamster. So if you're going to come along and tell me that you've got a whole new understanding of our physical reality and matter itself, it's not really the best way to start by coming to erroneous conclusions about a very basic experiment and saying that that's the proof of what you're saying. So I think a lot of people had one foot out the door already, and then he follows up by pulling the fire alarm. And I'll fill in the first part of this. He says that ever since a very young age, he could do basically lucid dreaming, and we'll kind of jump in the middle right here. This is sped up a little from the original, just so you know.
Big crystalline flowers, like a giant, like 5 feet across. And every time I tried to see his face, he would reach in and hand me another shape. And I was so fascinated with the shapes because they didn't look like the platonic solids. They didn't look like anything I'd ever seen before. And he would hand me these shapes, and each shape was different and amazing. And I woke up from that dream. But after that moment, anytime something strange would happen in a dream, I had the powers of inception. Anytime I would be naked at school, I would say, I'm not naked. I must be dreaming. And immediately I would run out of the school or run out of wherever I was, and I would find that mansion again. And I had access to all the knowledge. The proof of it is the 97 patents that I have now. The proof of it is the industries that I've innovated. It's like waking up, having a dream that you have a diamond in your hand, and out of nowhere, you wake up and you're hoping you're holding it, and you try and hold it, and it's gone when you wake up. But the proof is all the stuff that I've been able to do now.
So this is all in the first 6 minutes of a 3-hour interview. Most people are already caught in the traffic jam trying to get on the freeway and get the hell out of town. I'd probably be right there with him, but I've heard of him before. I've heard that he's really smart. So I wanted to see where he's going with all this. Okay, I'm familiar with the concept of the Akashic Records. The idea that all the knowledge of the universe is out there or in here somewhere. So, okay, maybe he has cracked the code and he can access this universal knowledge. I'm highly skeptical, but I can fit that in my realm of possibilities. And sorry, but having a bunch of patents doesn't prove anything. You can have 20 patents on a machine that produces unicorns, and as long as it's not infringing on anyone else's patent, and you've got the 10 grand to pay the attorneys and all the fees, then they'll grant you a patent. You don't have to prove that your idea works, you just have to prove that it's not someone else's idea. There's a patent for a urinal headrest, apparently just because nobody else had thought of it. So I'm still here, but you better start dropping some next level nuggets if you're telling me that this all came from a mansion that contains all the knowledge of the universe in your dreams. And I apologize if I'm boring you guys to death. I feel like I've been talking 9 minutes here and hadn't really said much. I'll definitely try to make up for it in the next video, because this isn't a total loss by any means here that we're talking about. If this were all a big bust, I wouldn't be making this video.
Build the periodic table, build a new periodic table, because the stuff I had learned in college, I went to school for chemical engineering the first year over at Pratt. And they, at the time, I think it was like 108 elements. And I told the teacher, the professor, about the relationship between hydrogen on the spectrometer and carbon and silicon and cobalt. And I was like, it's the same exact color, same tone. just doubled in each octave. And he was like, no, each element is the same element and it will always be that element. And I was like, you don't see the relationship. So I left school and I was going to spend 40 years rebuilding a periodic table. And I found out that Walter Russell had already did that. And he did it based upon the natural curvature of everything.
And when you say rebuild the periodic table, what do you mean specifically?
Well, the way the periodic table is laid out, the periodic table they have now,
Let's see
it looks like a box. It looks like a straight box.
Mm-hmm.
And they don't show the relationship that between every element, there's two no.
All right, here's the periodic table.
You'll see hydrogen sitting all the way over there by itself, but they don't show that hydrogen has the same tone as carbon.
What do you mean by tone?
Same tone, same key of E. Same key of E. 40.5 hertz. The next one would be like 81 hertz. You go to silicon, it will double up and would be 162 hertz. You'll go to cobalt and it'll be 324 hertz. It's, in that base, if you were to take the angles of incidence or the tones that they create, their color. Like you can turn color back into sound based upon, it's the same wavelength, it's just twice as long or much longer. So all you have to do is keep dividing light by 2.
Keep that up, Jamie.
You keep dividing light by 2, and you'll ultimately get back to the audible sound of it, because there was a relationship between light and color, sound and tone, matter and shape. I put, I sent over Walter Russell's.
I was trying to get to that. That's what.
Yeah, it's Walter Russell's periodic table that he put together. Now you would compare that to what Mendeleev's periodic table. You'll compare Walter Russell's to it, and you'll see something completely different. It's unwinding.
Whoa.
It's unwinding. And you see there's a relationship that hydrogen.
So you had figured this out at a young age?
I had already seen this. This was all inside of that palace. I had access to it. And I knew the relationship.
So you saw this in dreams?
I saw it as a circle. Everything was a full circle laid out, and each area was just expanding, like wrapping a rag around your hand. The first wrap, it's so tight. The very first wrap is so tight. That's the first one that Walter Russell did, yeah. But go back to the wiggly one. This is how I saw it more so, but as a vortex. But you'll see there's a relationship between hydrogen, carbon, silicon, cobalt, rhodium. They're all bonded. They're all sit as the middle point between two noble gases. So those things don't really exist. It's only one substance. Now the problem is, the first thing that we're able to perceive is hydrogen. That's the first visible element, because before it is too dense for us to perceive it. You understand what I'm saying?
So he gets into the frequency and vibration concept, and unless you've done your own research online, which most people haven't, then this is just all Greek. Funny enough, when I was looking up a pic for the Tesla quote, it came up as Albert Einstein saying everything in life is vibration. But you normally hear this quote from Tesla. And I don't think that either one of them came up with this. I think John Worrell Keeley, who Howard mentions, was the first one to introduce this idea. I did a video about him a while back. And he allegedly made a machine that ran off of what he calls sympathetic vibration. But if you didn't already know about this kind of stuff and you hear him talking about matter being in tones and octaves, then a lot of people just wrote him off as crazy. Honestly, to me, he's coming across as a guy that's been deep down a rabbit hole and is trying to explain it to somebody that's never even scratched the surface. It's kind of like me explaining my idea of history to somebody. You have to unlearn so much before you can actually start understanding what I'm talking about. But here's the deal, is none of this is original information. So I'll just briefly explain a little bit about what Walter Russell's work was. This is what I'm actually going to go in depth about on the next video, because this is possibly genius level stuff here. And I'm still trying to fill in the blanks on my understanding about all this. But his theory is that there is but one substance, the ether, and basically all matter comes about from electrical vibrations within that. And I think technically all matter occupies the spaces in between the ether. Not to go too deep into that, but all matter is these electrical impulses expanding and contracting. The first couple octaves are so dense that we can't even detect it. But then if it expands out to the fourth octave, you've got hydrogen. Well, I guess that'd be kind of the first note in that octave. But if you go out to the first note of the fifth octave, you've got lithium, the second note, beryllium, and so on. And I found it really interesting that right at the neutral point, between the positive and negative, is where you have the noble gases. The noble gases don't react with other elements. So it actually makes a lot of sense that they're located at a neutral point in between the positives and negatives. So to me, this is all really interesting stuff. And if you told me that you had had a dream and gone to the source of all knowledge and you came back and you drew all this out, then I might believe you. But that's not what we've got here. He says he was in college and they didn't realize the relationship between the different elements. And he decided he was going to make it his life's mission to map this all out. But then he found Walter Russell's work, so he didn't have to do it anymore. And then he takes his diagram and says, yep, that's what I saw. Another unfalsifiable claim. But let's keep going. Here's where he's talking about the flower of life.
Off of this cube, a squared plus b squared equals c
So
squared.
they wanted to use all of these intertwining circles and create straight lines.
Because that's how they thought everything came down, to straight lines. They thought the world was flat. And I was like, oh my goodness. They didn't open the flower properly. So the next one would be the icosahedron.
Now, the flower of life, it's very, very old. The concept is very old. What was the origin of the concept?
It's the oldest symbol known to mankind. It's believed that it was Anki, the brother of Enlil, if you go by the Emerald
Sumerian
Tablets.
text.
Yeah, the Sumerian text, that was the one that created mankind. Because if you look at mankind, and there's a point I want to make with it. I want you to stay on the book, go to 134 on the book. And this is what that other gentleman being told me to do. He said, why don't you just take the pieces that make up the flower and put them together based on universal ratios? So if you want to, you're able to pull it up.
164?
Page 134. 134 in the book. So this is the juxtapose of the mistake they made. Yep, just tap right onto that. Yep, just tap on it. Now, this was made by David Johnson, one of our programmers, Argos Fuel. So if you go to the far left and tap on that, I took 4 of those triangles. And wow. And you can scroll around. This is what happens when 4 bubbles meet. This is the negative space where they can't touch each other. This is hydrogen. And as I was saying, electricity is always trying to get to the center of that triangle, but it gets pushed out. And now you see it has 4 contractive poles, which is the electric poles. Just go around it from horizontally, yeah. It has 4 contractive poles because electricity is seeking a higher pressure condition and forcing it in, where magnetism is seeking a lower pressure condition and is spun out. So the vortices, those tips, that's the magnetic field. That's where they begin. But it has an equal attractor and an equal amount of repulsion. So if you go to what happens when 8 bubbles meet, they gave me the patents to that. I call that the tetrahedron.
So this is the negative space in between 8 bubbles.
8 bubbles. This is a negative space where 8 bubbles meet, and you can scroll around.
And this is ignored when they're concentrating on straight lines.
Completely, because if you look from the top, I haven't violated anything. It fits perfectly inside of there. But this is a negative space where 8 bubbles meet, but you'll notice it has 8 contractive poles, but it only has 6 magnetic poles, 6 vortices, so it has a greater electrical potential than a repulsion. So maybe this is the strong nuclear force, and the previous one was the weak nuclear force. So I was like, okay, I called this the Huntian after my son. So I was like, what happens when 6 bubbles meet? If you'll go to the one right in the center. Now you see that it has these huge bubbles, fast moving, but there's 6 strong spheres that's going around this, but the greater attractor has grabbed the 2 weaker attractors. And this looks just like a photon, and guess what? It has 30 poles. What is the speed of light?
So he continues to scale this up and up. Now, he may be talking completely over my head here. The first part of it made some sense to me. How this is the space between 4 spheres. He didn't specify which part is matter and which part is ether. But okay, maybe you've found the space between space. But then when he starts scaling this up, it seems like that first principle no longer applies. Here you can see the circle, just imagine that's a sphere. But then when you add one over here, you no longer have that interstitial space that was supposedly making up that shape in the first place. But he never explains what this is or what it does. I'm just assuming he's still talking about matter here. And what practical insight have we gained here? How do we apply this to our understanding of the world? There may be an answer to that, I don't know, but he didn't explain that. other than a drone concept that he came up with. He refers to this concept as linchpin, and I believe that's that first shape that we're talking about. Again, linchpin is not clearly defined, and he describes things like changing the angle of incidence without describing what happens or what he means by angle of incidence, because that's usually just used in light refraction. But let's look at his drone concept.
You. But their ability, because this is the geometry of hydrogen, any bond that hydrogen can make, linchpin can make, and what they're basically doing is building the periodic table in front of you. If you play four of them coming together, it's four like 30-second videos. I'll explain it out, but you'll see how these things align themselves. Well, this is the swarm, and they're all following this queen as a colony, and they'll do everything that she's doing. Go to the very first video. There's four in a row on it. Oh, that's how it came over to you. Well, let's see which one this is. This is four of them that's going to come together to pick up a barrel.
And what's powering them?
Right now, we're going to use hydrogen fuel cells. But I have another system, that I was going to talk about in a second. But it's an unlimited source of power.
So hydrogen fuel cells,
or you can use lithium batteries.
And how are they moving? Like, what are those? Is that like are those like propellers?
Yeah, those are props. But
okay.
But that right there.
So he just makes the claim that this is the shape of hydrogen, so this will work great. And he makes a lot of claims like this. That okay, what about that is the shape of hydrogen? Where is any type of real world measurements about that? But aside from that, the concept of a drone swarm is certainly nothing new. Following the leader, nothing new. Even interlocking to lift things is not a new concept. This is the first time I've seen the interlocking hexagons that can rotate around its center of mass, but I can't find any practical advantage to that. You're not saving any energy by doing that. The overall output of energy is going to be the same for the mass. And actually, with the rotors overlapping each other, it's, disturbing the wind fields and possibly even making the other rotors work harder to stay afloat. The fact that they interlock and can rotate is cool, but I don't see a practical advantage, certainly not for lifting. Joe asks what's powering this, and he says, well, we will use hydrogen fuel cells. But then he eventually whittled down to lithium batteries and propellers. So he's really not introduced any truly novel or even revolutionary ideas. He does mention a new propulsion system, which that would be. So let's hear that.
In order for us to do that, but linchpin is able to make it out there because we have another propulsion system that we've put together where I'm able to take water and put it into a small change. Then this patent has been granted. It's the propulsion projectile, and we patented it as a gun because I didn't want anybody else to be able to use it like a gun, but it's basically lightning in a bottle. We take water and we put it inside of a small chamber based on the wave conjugations that I have and the angles of incidence. And we run an electric charge through a small amount of water. The water is not able to expand into gas like it wants to because it's locked into the pressure condition. So immediately it converts into plasma. And it converts the gas dimension into a power dimension. So it's lightning out of the barrel just from water. And there's no end like with...
So it's a real lightning gun, like Quake.
Yes. So, and the patent's been granted. Typically, you're limited to how much charge you can put inside of a cartridge. And, you have to get more and more charge or explosive in there to get something out. But with electricity, you can send 1,000 volts or 1,000,000 volts through the same aperture. And that water is incompressible. And so it's just going to react, and immediately it converts into a plasma. And so
So by using wave conjugation, an undefined term, and changing the angle of incidence, an undefined term, we're able to create lightning in a bottle by putting electricity into water. So what he's actually claiming here is that he's created over unity to where he can get more power output than power input, unless I'm interpreting this the wrong way. But let's say he's all correct about this and it does work. Well, cool, bust out the prototype and I guarantee you people will pay attention. If it works that good, I guarantee you some oil company will be willing to pay you hundreds of millions of dollars so they can bury it in their basement. But from what he's describing, there would be a great deal of mechanical issues with making that work because you're relying on a small chamber to keep the water compressed so that when you zap it with the electricity, then it transforms into a plasma. Then to convert that into propulsion, you have to have something that releases that pressure, which he described as an electricity gun, which I don't understand how the pressure is converted to an electrical discharge. Unless he was just being metaphorical about that and meaning it's fast as lightning. And once again, just because you've got a patent for it doesn't mean that it's anything special. Honestly, the whole conversation seemed like any random conversation I might have got into in my 20s. I did a lot of hallucinogens, and so did the people I hung out with, and this is the kind of deep stuff you contemplate. You really do start experiencing the world in a different way, and you have all of these little insights. It disconnects you some from the rigid sense of self and puts you in touch with the oneness of the universe. Instead of you being the separate entity from everything around you, you experience it as being part of everything. And after an experience like that, you naturally start questioning the nature of reality. And that's really what it sounds like here with Terrance Howard. It sounds like he's had a few really good experiences and then went deep down the rabbit hole trying to understand it. So I didn't see this all as absolute crazy talk, and it led to probably 15 hours or so of me looking into Walter Russell's work, which is some interesting, somewhat original ideas. But actually, 100 years ago, all of these people thought in mystical, metaphysical terms. Rudolf Steiner, John Worrell Keeley, Nicholas Rourke, Madame Blavatsky, and probably even Himmler all saw the world as a divine creation instead of just the nuts and bolts approach that we take nowadays. I honestly believe that this interview would have been much better received 100 years ago than today. But all that being said, I didn't hear him bring up anything revolutionary. And quite a few things were flat out wrong. He said that our mathematical system is all messed up because 1 times 1 isn't 1. And then used a word salad to back that up. And sorry, but the principle behind 1 times 1 equaling 1 can be demonstrated over and over again. You don't need the numerical system to do that. But I don't understand why some people got so upset about that. One of the dumbest ways that they've trained everybody to think is to say that if somebody got something wrong, then they shouldn't be allowed to speak, period. Nobody benefits from just knowing something's wrong. They benefit from knowing why it's wrong. Anyway, I've rambled on long enough. If anybody's even still listening, then you must be really bored. But even though I did think the majority of what Terrance claimed was wrong, I did ultimately learn some new things, and I will try to take what I've learned from Walter Russell and put it in to a format that's easily comprehensible. Static out.